Love is supposed to be built on trust. On honesty. On the unshakable belief that the person standing beside you, the one who has vowed to love and cherish you, is exactly who they say they are. We hear it in wedding vows, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do us part. Simple words. A promise. A bond that should be unbreakable. Michael Reynolds believed in that promise. He was a husband, a father, a man who had built his life around the woman he adored. To the outside world, he and Rebecca had the kind of marriage most people dream about, full of laughter, devotion, and the quiet, unspoken understanding that comes from years spent side by side. Their love story seemed perfect. Seemed. But love, as we know, is never that simple. Beneath the surface of their marriage, hidden in the shadows of their everyday life, there was something Rebecca had never told him. A secret buried in the past, locked away in the hope that it would never see the light of day. She had moved forward, built a life, loved a man who, by all accounts, loved her back. But the past has a way of catching up. Secrets have a way of clawing their way to the surface, whether we want them to or not. It happened on a day like any other. A doctor's visit. A simple checkup. A routine question, and then, a truth revealed in the cold, sterile air of a medical office. A truth that landed like a hammer. A truth Michael had never even considered. A truth that, to him, rewrote every moment of their marriage. Rebecca Reynolds was not the woman he thought she was. What was said in that doctor's office, the words that turned a husband's love into something else, something violent, would become the subject of endless speculation. Some would say it was betrayal. Others would say it was fear. But no one, not the doctors, not Rebecca, not even Michael himself, could have predicted what would come next. A conversation turned into an argument. An argument turned into silence. And then, silence turned into something much worse. On a quiet night, in a home filled with memories, Michael Reynolds picked up a gun. The same hands that had once caressed his wife's face, held her close, wiped away her tears, now gripped cold steel. A trigger was pulled. Life ended. And in that single, deafening moment, love and rage became indistinguishable. Was it a crime of passion? A blind, uncontrollable moment of fury? Or had the seeds of this tragedy been planted long before that day in the doctor's office? The truth, as it unraveled, would shock everyone. And in the end, the question remained. Did Michael Reynolds ever really know the woman he married? Michael Reynolds was the kind of man people trusted. A husband. A father. A man who, by all accounts, had built a life rooted in family, faith, and unwavering principles. He worked hard, provided for his loved ones, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who believed he had it all figured out. He was steady. Reliable. The kind of man who kept his word. Rebecca Reynolds was the woman who stood beside him. Warm, kind, and full of life, she had a way of making people feel at ease. She was beautiful, not just in the way she looked, but in the way she carried herself, the way she laughed, the way she listened, the way she loved. She and Michael had what seemed like the perfect marriage, a love story that began the way all great love stories do, with a chance encounter, an undeniable connection, and the kind of passion that makes forever seem like a promise that can actually be kept. They met on a crisp autumn afternoon, introduced by mutual friends at a church gathering. Michael, reserved and traditional, wasn't the type to believe in love at first sight. But Rebecca. Rebecca had a presence he couldn't ignore. She was different. Not just in the way she spoke, or the way she carried herself, but in the way she saw him, as if she already knew him, as if she had been waiting for him. And for the first time in his life, Michael let himself believe in something bigger than logic, bigger than reason. He let himself believe in her. Their courtship was fast. Within months, they were inseparable. Late-night conversations that stretched into early mornings. Walks in the park, hands entwined, whispers of the future they would build together. Michael had always been cautious, deliberate in the way he moved through life, but with Rebecca, everything felt easy. Natural. Right. They married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Michael, in his navy blue suit, standing at the altar with the steady hands of a man who had never once questioned his decision. Rebecca, in a white lace gown, glowing with the quiet confidence of a woman who knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Vows were exchanged. Promises were made. And as Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, he believed, truly believed, that their love was unshakable. But love is not always what it seems. Beneath the warmth of their shared moments, beneath the smiles captured in photographs, beneath the whispered, "I love yous" in the dark, something waited. A truth that had remained hidden. A truth that Rebecca had chosen to leave in the past. A truth that, when it finally came to light, would turn the man who once vowed to protect her, into the man who would take her life. A routine doctor's visit. A question asked without hesitation. A truth revealed in an instant. It was that simple. That fast. A lifetime of love, of certainty, of trust, undone by a single sentence. Michael Reynolds sat beside his wife, waiting, listening, unaware that the world he knew was about to be ripped apart. Rebecca had been feeling unwell, dizzy spells, fatigue, nothing serious. But Michael insisted. He had always looked out for her, always made sure she was taken care of. It was just another appointment, just another routine checkup. The doctor barely looked up from the chart. A quick glance, a casual tone, the kind of clinical detachment that comes from years of repetition. And then. Since your transition, have you noticed any recurring symptoms? Michael's breath caught in his throat. The words rang in his ears, louder than anything else in the room. He turned to Rebecca, waiting for her to correct the doctor, waiting for her to laugh, to shake her head, to say there had been some kind of mistake. But she didn't. She didn't say anything at all. The silence was louder than words ever could be. Michael pushed back his chair, legs scraping against the tile. The doctor kept talking, explaining something about medical history, confidentiality, a past that had nothing to do with him, until now. But Michael didn't hear any of it. His hands clenched. His pulse pounded. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. Rebecca reached for him, fingers brushing his arm, but he pulled away. He walked out without a word. The drive home was a blur. Hands gripping the steering wheel. Jaw locked so tightly it ached. No music. No distractions. Just the sound of his own breathing, heavy and ragged, fighting for control. Images flashed through his mind, Rebecca laughing, Rebecca holding his hand, Rebecca on their wedding day, looking up at him with those warm, trusting eyes. Trust. Has she ever really trusted him? Has she ever really loved him? Or had it all been a lie? The front door slammed behind him. The walls of their home, once familiar, felt foreign. The photographs on the shelves, the wedding pictures, the carefully placed reminders of a life he thought was real. Now they felt like something else. Something taunting. Something cruel. The sound of the car pulling into the driveway made him turn. Rebecca stepped inside hesitantly, her face uncertain, guarded. She had seen him angry before, but never like this. Never this quiet. Never this still. Michael. How long? The question cut through the air like a blade. Rebecca swallowed, searching his face, searching for something in his eyes that told her he would understand. But there was nothing there. Just cold. Just distance. Before I met you, she said finally. Before you. Before any of this. Her voice was soft. Apologetic. But to Michael, it was nothing more than confirmation. A lifetime of memories, rewritten in an instant. The woman he had loved. The woman he had married. The woman he had built his life around. A stranger. The rage came in waves. Questions, accusations, words that spilled out sharp and fast. Did anyone else know? Had she been laughing behind his back? Had she ever planned to tell him? Rebecca flinched at the venom in his voice. This was not the man she had married. This was someone else. Someone she didn't recognize. Hours passed. The argument burned through the night, leaving only embers of exhaustion. Michael walked out. Rebecca sat in the dark, staring at the walls, knowing she had lost something she would never get back. She didn't sleep that night. Neither did he. 3 days passed. Michael spoke to no one. He didn't answer calls. Didn't go to work. Didn't step inside the church where he had once stood with Rebecca, their hands clasped, their futures intertwined. He barely ate. Barely moved. The world continued on without him, but he was stuck, trapped inside his own mind, replaying the moment over and over, each time sinking deeper. Anger had turned into something colder. Something more certain. A decision waiting to be made. The night was quiet. Rebecca sat on the couch, the glow of the television flickering across her face, but her mind was elsewhere. Every noise made her flinch. Every shadow in the hallway made her breath hitch. She had convinced herself that he would come back. That he would listen. That he would forgive. But some things, once broken, can never be repaired. Rebecca sat up. The front door opened slowly. Michael stepped inside, his expression unreadable. He was calm now. Too calm. She opened her mouth to speak, but he beat her to it. "I just need to understand," he said. Hope flickered in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way forward. She stood, moving toward him. Rebecca stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at Michael, really looked at him. And she saw it then. The finality in his eyes. The decision has already been made. Michael. The gunshot echoed through the house. Then another. Then silence. The first shot tore through the silence, a sharp, deafening crack that sent shockwaves through the night. The second came just seconds later, a final punctuation to a moment that could never be undone. Rebecca Reynolds collapsed, her body crumpling against the couch. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and glistening under the dim glow of the television. The room, once filled with the warmth of shared laughter and whispered conversations, was now frozen in time, a crime scene. Outside, the quiet suburban neighborhood remained undisturbed. A car idled at a distant stop sign. A porch light flickered across the street. Someone, somewhere, was washing dishes, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding just feet away. But then, the silence fractured. The call came in at exactly 11:47 p.m. A woman's voice, trembling, barely comprehensible. 911 operator, 911, what's your emergency? Caller, frantic, gasping for air, I heard gunshots. 2 of them. From the Reynolds house. Please, oh my God, please hurry. Patrol units were dispatched immediately. Sirens sliced through the stillness, growing louder, closer, an urgent, racing pulse against the quiet. When officers arrived, the front door was ajar. No forced entry. No signs of struggle beyond the devastation left behind. And there, in the center of it all, stood Michael Reynolds. His hands were covered in blood. The gun, still warm, lay at his feet. He did not run. He did not move. Rebecca's body lay motionless just a few feet away. The life that had once filled her eyes, gone. Officers shouted commands, their weapons drawn. Officer, step away. Hands where we can see them. Michael obeyed without hesitation. Slowly, methodically, he lifted his hands into the air. His face was blank, unreadable. His breath, steady. And then, just as they moved in, just as cold metal closed around his wrists, he spoke. 4 words. Quiet. Unshaken. Final. She should have told me. The weight of those words lingered in the air long after he was taken away. Detectives would later recount the moment in hushed tones, the chilling calmness in his voice, the eerie acceptance of what he had done. He did not plead. He did not cry. He simply surrendered, because, in his mind, he had already won. News of the crime spread quickly. Headlines flashed across television screens. True crime enthusiasts dissected every detail. Social media swirled with speculation, outrage, and debate. Murder, or a man pushed to the edge. A cold-blooded execution, or an act of self-defense. Michael Reynolds had his version of events. But the truth? The truth would come later, inside a courtroom, beneath the weight of evidence, in the eyes of a jury forced to decide whether betrayal justified the pulling of a trigger. Justice, some would say, is blind. But in this case, justice would have to look closely, at the man, at the motive, and at the moment where love turned to something else entirely. As the first responders stepped inside the Reynolds home, they were met with the aftermath of a brutal act. The house, once a haven of quiet suburban normalcy, now echoed with the ghosts of a crime. Rebecca's body was found in the living room, slumped against the couch, her chest still warm but fading, her eyes staring blankly ahead. A .45 caliber handgun was discovered nearby, its metallic surface reflecting the dim lights. Forensic teams began their work immediately. Bullet trajectory analysis showed that Rebecca was facing her attacker when the first shot was fired, striking her in the chest, an unprovoked assault. The second shot followed almost immediately, hitting her in the abdomen as she collapsed backward, unable to defend herself. The weapon was registered to Michael Reynolds, legally obtained, with no indication of theft or tampering. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. It was calculated. A decision made in a moment of blind rage. A search of the home yielded disturbing evidence, the couple's personal items, family photographs, and text messages. A hidden world of tension emerged, one that Michael had tried to conceal beneath the veneer of a perfect marriage. Detective, calm, professional. We need to understand, Michael. Why did you do this? Why Rebecca? Michael, staring straight ahead, emotionless. She lied to me. She wasn't the person I thought I married. Detective, pressing. Is that really why you killed her? Just because of a secret she kept? You didn't even try to talk to her, did you? Michael, quiet, firm. I tried. I asked. She lied. In the following weeks, detectives uncovered a series of text messages and social media posts exchanged between Michael and Rebecca in the months leading up to her death. There were arguments, heated, sometimes violent words exchanged over trivial matters. But more importantly, there were exchanges about trust, about deception. One message stood out. Rebecca had texted a friend just days before the murder. Rebecca, text. I think he knows. I'm scared. It was clear. The foundation of trust had crumbled long before that fateful night. Michael's anger had been brewing, his internal rage fed by feelings of betrayal and shame. But did that justify what had happened? The courtroom became the stage for a battle of conflicting narratives. Was Michael Reynolds a man pushed to the edge, a victim of betrayal who snapped in a moment of emotional distress? Or was he a cold-blooded murderer, premeditating the death of a woman who had been his wife? The prosecution argued that Michael had planned the murder. They pointed to his calm demeanor after the shooting, the lack of remorse, his quiet surrender. There was no sign of an emotional outburst, only the calculated act of a man who felt betrayed. The second bullet, they argued, proved it wasn't an accident. Prosecutor, in closing arguments, firm and resolute. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we have here is not a crime of passion. This was not a spur-of-the-moment reaction. This was a man who, in his mind, felt deceived. He didn't snap, he made a choice. A choice that cost a woman her life. They painted a picture of Michael as a man consumed by rage and dishonesty, someone who could not cope with the truth, someone who felt entitled to exact punishment. But could it be that his actions weren't premeditated at all? That, instead, they were driven by something more complex? The defense, led by Michael's lawyer, built their case around the notion of temporary insanity, a moment of uncontrollable emotional turmoil that clouded Michael's judgment. They argued that the discovery of Rebecca's transgender identity had triggered a severe psychological breakdown. Defense attorney, passionate, pleading Michael Reynolds was not a murderer. He was a man betrayed by the woman he loved, pushed beyond the breaking point. His mind, overwhelmed by shock, anger, and confusion, could not process the enormity of the deception. This was not premeditated. This was a crime of passion, a desperate act by a man in emotional distress. To bolster this claim, the defense called on expert testimonies. Psychologists testified that Michael's worldview, shaped by his religious upbringing and traditional beliefs, left him ill-equipped to handle such a revelation. They argued that his reaction, while tragic, was born out of a deep sense of shame and betrayal. Expert, psychologist, on the stand. In cases of severe emotional trauma, such as the revelation of a long-hidden secret, a person may experience temporary psychosis. This is not uncommon in individuals with rigid belief systems, where the shock of betrayal distorts their perception of reality. The trial was filled with moments of heightened tension. Both sides presented compelling arguments. But ultimately, it was the jury who would decide. The jury deliberated for days, weighing the complexities of the case. They knew this was no simple story of love gone wrong. This was a man and a woman who had shared a life, only for that life to unravel in the most tragic way possible. When the verdict was finally read, the courtroom fell silent. Judge, calm, neutral. We the jury find the defendant, Michael Reynolds, guilty of second-degree murder. The room erupted in whispers, but Michael remained motionless. He had been found guilty, but the charge of premeditated murder had not been proven. The sentencing phase followed shortly thereafter. Michael's defense team pleaded for leniency, citing his emotional state and lack of prior criminal history. But the prosecution pushed for the maximum sentence, arguing that Rebecca's death was avoidable, preventable. In the end, Michael Reynolds was sentenced to 25 years to life, the weight of his actions now a permanent part of his future. But for Rebecca's family and friends, the sentence wasn't enough. They would forever be haunted by the unanswered question, could anything have prevented this? Public opinion on the case was deeply divided. Some believed Michael's actions were driven by a toxic blend of betrayal and emotional instability. Others saw him as a man trapped by his own beliefs, caught in a moment of devastating weakness. Across social media, the debate raged on. Was Michael Reynolds a monster, or a man who had been pushed beyond reason? And in the end, the question lingered, did the truth about Rebecca's past truly justify the violence that followed? Or had Michael been a man unable to reconcile his love with the truth? The truth may have been simple. But the aftermath was anything but. In the years following the trial, Michael Reynolds was a man trapped in the shadows of his own actions. In prison, he faced the quiet, often uncomfortable isolation of being a man defined by a single, catastrophic choice. But for those who loved Rebecca, the pain never faded. Her family, her friends, those who had seen the vibrant, loving woman before the tragedy, were left to piece together the fragments of a life that had been cruelly torn away. Rebecca's memory lived on, but it was forever linked to that moment of violence. There were those who believed that Michael's crime was one of passion, a moment of emotional instability that led to irreparable damage. Others couldn't reconcile the man they had known with the one who had shot his wife, and the gap between his remorse and their judgment was vast. Rebecca's friend, tearfully. I just keep thinking about how scared she must have been. She told me she felt trapped, like there was no way out. But she loved him. And that's what makes it so tragic. Rebecca's mother, somber, my daughter didn't deserve to die like that. She was a beautiful person. What they had, it wasn't love. Not really. For many, the tragedy wasn't just about Michael's crime. It was about the shattered illusion of love, a marriage built on a foundation of secrets, and a fatal misunderstanding. The case left a stain on the community, a reminder that even the most seemingly perfect relationships can crumble under the weight of untold truths. As time passed, the case faded from the headlines, but the questions remained. Could Michael Reynolds have ever forgiven the woman he loved, despite the secret she had kept from him? Or was the truth about Rebecca's past too much for him to bear? And what of the people who were left behind? How do you reconcile love with betrayal? How do you move forward when the past holds such a heavy weight? The house, once filled with laughter and light, stood silent, a mere shell of what it had once been. And in the end, no one could truly answer the question that had haunted the case from the very beginning: what would drive a man to kill the woman he claimed to love? Was justice served in this case? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do you believe deception was at the heart of this tragedy, or was it simply a moment of uncontrollable rage? We want to hear your thoughts. If you found this case shocking, just wait until you hear about the next one. Click here to discover another twisted true crime story that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chilling story. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.